All right, since we're running a couple minutes late, let's get started again. If I could get a spokesperson from each of the groups to summarize your discussion in less than 3 minutes, that would be very helpful. So can I get a spokesperson from the main conference room discussion? Any volunteers? Are they still in there? All right. All right, so maybe were you in, yeah, were you in the main conference room? All right, well, here, and then Yair has nominated himself.
Yeah, okay. So I have 70,000 lines of summary here. No, okay, so please chip in if you were in that discussion room and I'm missing something or not misrepresenting something. So it was a very short but very interesting discussion, and we raised a few points. One was from the interface between brokers and TOMs. So it's clear to us we don't want TOMs to recreate brokers. This is its whole thing. But it was not very clear to us, maybe we'll learn during the week, I don't know, how, say I have my favorite query at a different broker, at a certain broker, how do I integrate that into my TOM? Does the broker, and it sounds like maybe there are different approaches, there's no uniform approach now, that some brokers might build a plugin so that you can do the query directly in your TOM. Some brokers you have to go to the broker and define a stream and then somehow plug that stream into your TOM. So it seems like there might be good if there were like some uniform approach for how to do this communication between broker and TOM for the specific query that I'm interested in to get into the TOM. Let's see, the other point, another point that someone says is that once I can do that, the TOM is a great tool for visualizing the targets coming in. Some people from building brokers actually said we have all the backend, and maybe a use of a TOM will be as the front end of our broker to show, all of the candidates that people are searching for. So that could be another use of a TOM. That maybe, kind of like the calibration thing that people were not, I don't know if this was an expected use. Another question that came up is how much filtering do we want to do at the broker level to report to the TOM, and then how much filtering do we want to do at the TOM level, and what would be how would we decide? What would be the ways, how to weigh that? And okay, what if I'm getting streams from multiple brokers? How do I cross-reference things in the TOM? Can it do that? Can it get multiple streams and identify this is the same thing, or this broker has different information than this broker does on the same object? There was a question of more general, can TOMs handle candidate events rather than confirmed events that are named and actually known to be events? That was one part. The other part was the coordination between the TOM and the follow-up facilities. So once I have the stream in and I've cross-referenced all the candidates, I want to prioritize my candidates, and then I want to send that prioritized list off to some observatory. Is there a uniform language that I can say, this is priority 5 at LCO, but it's called priority high at Gemini, and it's called priority urgent at Swift, and it's called wake up the PI at something else? And especially for observatories getting requests from different TOMs, is there going to be some uniform language of what priorities mean and how to weigh them against each other between the different observatories and the different groups? So some kind of uniform priority language to communicate. And then finally, this is more a question of how are the follow-up facilities going to deal with once we all come out of this workshop and build 15 TOMs and start sending stuff to SOAR and Gemini through the TOMs. How are they going to deal with, coordinating this, right? So two people request the same target or different targets. Now, that is a problem for the observatories, but it's relevant for the TOMs because it would be very useful to be able to get feedback from the observatory, like we have, for example, at LCO, or at Las Cumbres, I should say, we're at Carnegie, that I can query Las Cumbres scheduler and say, are you planning on doing this or not? Because if not, I need to know and I'll send it to another place. Or if you're already doing this target for someone else, good, I'll ask for another one. And this kind of return communication to the TOM, not just from the side of the broker, but from the side of the follow-up facility would be also important. So yeah, I'm going to stop there.
And as a piece of this, if you're in any of these groups, and especially if you're a spokesperson, please write these things down into the ideas document that Rachel posted this morning. So I'm going to hand over to Lisa to hopefully answer some of the observatory questions, because that's what
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I think it was the same session, just from a slightly different direction, because what I had written down about summarizing our discussion was, there's multiple groups, regional observatories, collaborations who are working on harnessing resources to do this type of follow-up and interested in how we can coordinate. And some of the issues that came up were the same people wanting to do the same observation, and in particular communication with what people are actually doing. So you could do what Yair just said. Oh, it's already being done. I'll send this somewhere else, or something like that, in terms of not just coordinating between particular observations, but the information of what's in the queue now, and in the future. So I think that is an issue I hadn't particularly thought about a lot recently, but is relevant in terms of, if you're sitting in your TOM and you want to find out what's available to observe it is another question at facilities that you might have access to or not, and what's in the queue at facilities. We talked also, like Yair said, about sort of the interface between brokers and TOMs, and the really big issue of the intellectual horsepower that needs to go into doing the filtering in terms of brokers, but then also in terms of the TOMs, and what do you do when you want to have three. We didn't talk about the mechanics, but what do you do when you want to alerts from 3 different brokers, and so you want to define what you do with that data in the TOM, the logic you're using, how are you going to go about that? So all the things you mentioned about dealing with brokers, I think, is relevant for what we were talking about. And see, those are the main things that struck out for me in our discussion, but that we're all sort of looking for how this works in terms of what role does a TOM play in helping facilitate this. And some of these are higher level political issues now, kind of coming back to the top of my list.
And then last, Lindy's going to summarize the downstairs conference.
Yeah. So in the garden conference room was a small group. Jamie, Austin, Geza, and Costa and I were discussing TOM Toolkit feature requests, starting with cross-matching, maybe AstroQuery-based cross-matching within the TOM Toolkit. And Costa had a really nice demo of something that he mocked up, but like that functionality in the toolkit. So that went into the ideas document. And Geza had this need to see, as you explore your data and you're doing your data exploration, to annotate those explorations and the thoughts that you might be having along the way, so when the phone call comes, you don't forget it all. And so we explored the key value facility that's supported by the target objects in the TOM Toolkit, and discussed expanding that to other objects, other data products and images. And that also went into the ideas document. And then finally, in support of maybe a kind of a task list or to-do list idea, we thought of Trello integration from the TOM Toolkit might be useful, also in the ideas document.
Great. So yeah, put all of these ideas into the ideas document, and the more concrete things they say, I really want this feature in a TOM, the better, because then we might actually be able to implement it, right? With that, I will turn it back over to Rachel, and she'll give us a little logistics information.
Thank you, everybody, for contributing to that session. So the plan for the afternoon is that you should go ahead and head out for lunch. There's lots of places locally. There's a map of local restaurants on the meeting website if you're unfamiliar with the area. Please be back at 2 o'clock to start some of the hands-on sessions. Those will be in the 3 breakout rooms that you were just in. So feel free to go ahead and pick a room and stick with that for the afternoon session. And the other item I wanted to say is a couple of people have come to me with really great ideas for some discussion sessions, demos. So what I'm going to do is from tomorrow's session on, I'm going to modify the agenda slightly to add an unconference session so that we'll have an opportunity to have those starting from tomorrow onwards. So look for an update on the agenda. Okay.
And one last thing. If these are your sunglasses, please come get them. They look like they were left in the library yesterday. All right. Have a good lunch.
Thank you.